position of the country in providing world-class services, and actually, a job for all Filipinos to truly have value and bring value globally so that we can bring that value back to the furthest barangays in the Philippines.
Good morning to those who are joining us from the Philippines. Good afternoon to those who are in the West Coast and the Pacific. And good evening to our friends in New York and Washington, D.C. area. Welcome to this webinar on managing backroom operations, outsourcing, accounting, and financial functions to enable your company to focus on your core competencies. This event is being organized by the various Philippine Trade and Investment Centers, the Philippine Embassy and Consulates General in the United States. My name is Arman Talbo. I'm a consul at the Philippine Consulate General in New York. This webinar is the last installment of the Global Business Processes powered by the Philippines webinar series. From August 13 to October 1, top IT BPO executives discussed about the different types of outsourced services, such as virtual assistants, e-learning, creative content and engineering design, call centers, healthcare IT, clinical research, software and apps development, as well as accounting and other financial functions. Today, we will introduce the topics of managing backroom operations, outsourcing accounting and financial functions to enable your company to focus on your core competencies. We will be joined by two presenters, James Donovan, co-founder and group CEO of ADEC Innovations, and Bernice Parsons, president and co-founder of Vertaccount. Our speakers will be discussing the topics on your screen, which we hope will help our audience understand better what is managing backroom operations and how it can benefit your business amidst the disruptions in the business environment due to COVID-19. After the presentations, we will have a short Q&A. Let's now go to our presentations. Our first speaker is Mr. James M. Donovan, co-founder and group CEO of ADEC Innovations. The visionary behind ADEC Innovations, James advocates sustainable practice to generate measurable social and environmental impact alongside financial results. With over 25 years of investment banking and entrepreneurial expertise, his companies help advance the sustainability, environmental, technology, and data management initiatives of Fortune 1000 corporations around the world. James is also closely involved with the United Nations Global Compact and the UN Environment Program. He was awarded the 2014 UN Office for South-South Cooperation Visionary and is the coordinating lead author of the Data Knowledge chapter of the UN's Environment Program's 6th edition, the Global Environment Outlook, or the GEO6. His companies have more than 30 years of group experience in data management, software solutions, professional services, and workforce solutions, with services covering various industry sectors such as education, healthcare information, environment services, and compliance. Let us all welcome Mr. James Donovan.
Good morning. Consul Armin, thank you very much for that great introduction. I think I'll be sharing my slide deck from here. I'd like to thank also DTI and the Philippine Trade and Investment Center. One second, let me see if I can get these slides up. All right. Welcome, everyone. From wherever you're hailing, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Really excited to be here. We have a story to tell. ADEC was founded in the Philippines. We grew from the Philippines outward. Today, I've been asked to really focus on a piece of what we do, and it is focused on delivering backroom operations to the PEO or professional employment organization. So I hope to be able to get some vision of what we do, but why this is a very exciting piece of business that I think can be grown in the Philippines. All right. Slide, please. All right. Thank you. ADEC was born in the Philippines. We founded it with my partner, Carol Esquera. And from this humble beginnings, two people, we've actually grown a business that is globally positioned in over 15 countries with 20 sites. Why this matters? Because the Philippines has a world-class capability, and it needs to be also positioned out in the marketplace. And all of our products and services need to be able to step up and compete with those multinationals head on. And this is what ADEC has been doing through the years. I hope to be able to explain a little bit about what we're doing, but from the aspect of our client base, we cover government, NGOs, and enterprises. We've got over 1,500 clients around the world in different places. Happy to cover that, but today we've been asked to speak about professional, our HR side. Next slide, please. So ADEC provides assurance for customers. And it's really important for people to understand, at the end of the day, outsourcing is providing some type of pain relief or services that clients eventually come to rely upon as if it's their own. ADEC chose to focus on sustainability, environmental data, what we call is environment, social, and governance. We drive that through technology, and what we call as BPO services, we call it workforce solutions, and also the aspects of where capital goes. We support that. But again, today we're going to focus on what is called professional employment organizations. And some people would know that as HR outsourcing, but I hope to be able to explain it's so much more than that. Next slide, please. PEO at a glance. It's so important for the Philippines to understand the markets that we're going after should be growing markets, should be markets that we can actually enjoy the growth with our customers by taking away some of their pain points, but we're always in an expanding piece. So it's much more than just payroll management or tax benefit. It's actually expanded quite to cover many points. And to be frank, a lot of the multinationals and some of the biggest payroll processors in the world already operate in the Philippines. We think that this is an area that the Philippines can further, more and more practitioners can service a growing marketplace. Next slide. You know, we're living in a time that I can't say this is a once in an era situation with the COVID. And I'm not going to dwell a lot on it, but it really bears mentioning that this is a once in a lifetime situation for businesses to re-engineer themselves, re-envision what they could be, who they could come back, to rethink their business models to, towards more of a circular economy, to more sustainability, more environmental friendly, dealing with, frankly, the realities that we're in a resource constrained world. We have more population and constraints on future resources. So we're going to have to learn how to deal with these things in a lot smarter way. And we feel that there's a market for the Philippines to actually provide services for this. So without going too much, COVID is absolutely it's a challenge, and it's for all governments and businesses, but it is also a once in a 100-year era time in history for us to take a step back and go, how can we reposition our services and capabilities to the marketplace? Next slide, please. So this was where I was speaking about the global growing market of the PEO. We've been in this space for quite some time, and maybe a little bit of history. This market was actually created about 35 years ago because of a law in how benefits were handled. And it used to be called a leasing. You could lease employees from a third party and get tax savings. Those tax benefits eventually went away, but the market continued. And that market is called professional employment organizations. So these are third-party markets that really focus on not just payroll, but so many things. So really focusing in on the numbers, it's currently today valued at about 48 billion, and it's looking to go to 140 billion by 2029. So this is a market that we feel the Philippines can really go after, and because it's more than just data processing, it's more than just call center. It's actually really leans heavily on the capability of people to handle other people's problems. So this is a touch on the global PEO market. Next slide, please. Why is it growing? Well, it actually comes down to a couple things. One is the demand for healthcare benefits in these different markets and the complications of these healthcare benefits, plus compensation is shifting and how it's dealt with, and government regulations. All of these things become very much, they take away from a company's capability to focus on their revenue producing activities versus their back room. And this is where the Philippines can absolutely step in and make a difference. These are long-term engagements. While it takes a while to get going, these engagements typically go 3, 5, 7 years. I mean, once you're embedded, you become effectively the long-term trusted partner. Next slide, please. Advantages of this space really come down into the companies that pursue a PEO strategy are actually more profitable. And this is important to understand. While the Philippines has grown in its outsourcing business, we've typically focused on saving people money, which is a good thing. But this next generation of BPO services are going to have to include technology, include helping people run their businesses more profitably. And that's where PEO services are aligned to. Next slide, please. Pain points, absolutely greatest selling points ever with a client. If you can focus on how you can deliver a cost-effective solution and relieve pain points, you're about 80% there to closing the deal. And this really focuses on 3 things: the alignment of backroom operations versus the revenue generating activities, the time-consuming internal administration challenges, and frankly, the leadership inside a company that is dedicated to these services that could be redeployed. These pain points alone for most small to mid-sized companies really capture the client's attention. And this is, again, with the above average capabilities in the Philippines, we think this is a space that the Philippines can grab more business from. Next slide. Where is this business growing? North America is the biggest market, US and Canada, but actually Asia is one of the fastest growing markets. And the Philippines, it does exist in some parts of the Philippines, but really as a service provider, we feel that there's a fantastic opportunity to grow and position the Philippines as a center of excellence for these type of services. Next slide, please. Ideal destination. I can't say enough about this. We were born and founded in the Philippines. We very much have benefited by the capable manpower that exists. The government support is second to none. They've absolutely, if anyone is thinking of setting up or working with a Philippine company, the government support has not only just the financial incentives, but the frameworks that are provided is absolutely, world class. Improved technology infrastructure, bandwidth, and extending the business of second cities. And frankly, we've proven ourselves to be resilient in the face of a really dramatic time with the COVID. We absolutely think that the Philippines has proven itself maybe even better than some of our competitors that will go unnamed. But there's one big competitor out there that actually the Philippines has shined while they've had some challenges. So I think this is a time to focus on. We took the resiliency and proven that doing business in the Philippines makes a difference. Next slide, please. Being globally recognized is very important from the standpoint of international clients, global clients, whether they have some familiarity or they just want some reassurance. First, reviewing where the country sits among our competitors, understanding that Manila usually, frankly, is one of the first destinations, but then quickly other cities open up once we're established. We have 2 provincial sites that we're very satisfied with and are absolutely growing. We're growing those faster than Manila. The resources are there, the capability is there, the connection is there. So making sure that we also highlight that we are globally recognized by many different parties, but in this case, Thorns Services has recognized us, but many others have also. Next slide, please. We are in an evolving environment, not only the COVID, but the reality of that, the whole world was sent to work from home. And understanding that, what that really meant and how quickly some of the companies were able to recover from that. This is a once in an era of digital shift. Digital shift was happening anyways. The COVID experience really just accelerated things. It accelerated remote healthcare capability. It accelerated e-learning. It's accelerating the capability of what people thought could be done from home. Never was imagined. It's happening now. The Philippines can take advantage of this. We've shown we've been able to bounce back, and a lot of the companies are still expecting growth. We've experienced growth in 2020, and we expect that actually there'll be more growth coming to the Philippines. Next slide. Crisis resilient environment. We are in a decade of disruption, and maybe I've spent a little bit too much time at the UN, but we are facing many, many disruptions that are coming. And frankly, the pandemic is just the first. And we believe that the Philippines has shown itself to be climate resilient, and we need to further build upon that. And it's very exciting, but it's also challenging, that we need to also be able to describe to our clients how exactly we're able to deliver. But we've been able to bring everybody back to work. I can speak from our company that we have everybody 100% back to work. On average, it's been about 95% is still work from home, and about 5% of some of our IT folks needed to come back to the office. But we have also ironically seen an increase in productivity because of people not having to travel. And frankly, I think we've all experienced this new work from home that brings the work is very close. So we've seen a benefit from that. So next slide. Next wave cities are really where it's at. Now, first-time clients to the Philippines will absolutely look and go, everything they need for their expats or lifestyle is located in Manila or Cebu. But these cities, these 25 cities are really the gems where not only can you get quality employees, but you can actually give a better wage for that location and manage your attrition. Which is a challenge for any site. Once you get good people, you need to keep them. And to do that, bringing some of the work and bringing some of the setups into these next wave cities are what we believe is crucial to anyone's strategy. Again, we're speaking from our own experience. We've set up in Silay and Dumaguete, and we've done that now for about 7 years, and have had great success and found the resources we needed. And actually, they're growing faster than our Manila operations. So that's it. That's our point of view. We've done it. Anybody who wants to have further information on our experience, we're happy to give a real life vote of confidence and be able to happy to share our experience. Next slide. Okay, PEO solutions in the Philippines. I've covered, so many of the players that are already here. We have the biggest payroll processors in the world that actually have operations in the Philippines. Broadly speaking, it's HR services, benefits, workman's comp, payroll, time and attendance, robust technology in some shape or fashion, whether it's a client's platform or your own platform. This is being done now. But this also expands into a much broader scope. Next slide. What we found is that it further expands into treasury services, compliance, tax, benefit reconciliation, and actually it kind of sprawls into 100 different programs that you end up running for customers. And this is where you cross over from being a third-party provider to being a partner. And it's really important. I cannot emphasize enough that the success of the Philippines partnering with clients and being there for the journey through the good times and bad times. And we've had this, where we've had times where clients have had to retrench people on their side of the ocean and our side also, and that we were there for their growth. So by being part of these critical solutions to them, you are really part of their organization. So this is some of our solutions. Next slide. You know, ADEC has been really benefited by growing in the Philippines, and you know, I was lucky enough to land there many years ago and grow a business. Myself and Carol Esquera, and our focus of what ADEC does is we want to help companies along a journey, and that journey is to make better decisions. Now, broadly speaking, that falls into the Sustainable Development Goals, and we try to help companies transition to better practices through following whether business best practices or some type of a North Star for regulation or non-regulation. We help NGOs, NGOs, coalitions, some of the best names, and we also provide data services to governments. These are capabilities that you probably would not even envision that's being provided from Philippine capability. So I'm saying this not as an advertisement for ADEC. I'm saying this as an advertisement for the capability and value that's produced in the Philippines is really an unrecognized gem. And how it's framed, I guess that's what we've specialized in. It already existed, but we put it in a framework that we could then bring it around the globe. So these things are already being done in the Philippines. And if you have backroom capability, I would say, you know, or needs, the Philippines is a place to start. But there's so many more things the Philippines can do. Next slide. ADEC, you know, ADEC, while being founded in the Philippines, has grown over the years. We're in 15 countries, 20 locations. It's important that we truly position the Philippines as a world-class partner. And we've done that by working on sustainable development goals and providing services. However you are, whether you're a provider or you're a potential client, please look at the Philippines, look at what's grown or being done in the Philippines by some of the world's best and biggest companies, and I think you'll be quite surprised. Next slide. It's important to understand what is an ideal partner. You know, what's in the PEO space, and I'm trying to this was my task to speak about this, but it's important to truly put yourself in the shoes of the client. It's not, you know, it's price is important, you know, sale, you know, making the sale is important, but so is having the long-term leadership and making sure that you're, you know, aligned with the client, having the industry expertise. You know, in some cases, we've had to bring on people in the front countries or people that have had extensive experience in particular lines. Being able to be fast and deliver a quick deployment is important. It's wonderful if you have great solutions, but if it takes 3 months, sometimes, you know, the clients can't wait. They have pains or problems today. And resiliency and reliable. You know, everybody, once a partnership is made, clients don't often want to switch. It's difficult and painful for them. So truly being a ideal partner, this, I think that the PEO market is a great opportunity for the Philippines, and the Philippines capability is, if it's repositioned, let's say, or targeted at this particular space, could make a real dent in this space. Next slide. Some of the numbers that we have, we were asked to sort of show just in our PEO space. We've got about 670 clients. We're processing, you know, 360,000 documents, you know, benefits, tax returns, these type of aspects. These are our creds in the space. Happy to answer any questions anybody has in the Q&A, or they can send us an email. But these clients and business was won over the last 20 years now. But we still feel that this market has a lot of growth for many people. There should be many ADECs out there providing these services. Next slide. Understanding that, you know, services that we all provide typically are invisible data. So having frameworks that help clients translate the value, the quality, the services really matter. And whatever they are, whether that's ISO standards or standards for particular subspaces, are absolutely important. So this gives clients a level, depending upon the size of the client, it gives them legal liability and assurance that you as a provider can meet certain requirements. And it allows you to talk to their quality on sort of a equal footing. If it's a international standard that they subscribe to and you're also at that same level, it allows you to check that box. So I can't say enough about making sure that we as a country continue to further standards for data security, data privacy, and also champion any international standard that can raise the bar of the Philippine capability. Next slide. You know, summing up, I really want to be able to get to the Q&A and you know, add some real value of I'm a serial entrepreneur, so I'm excited to, you know, explain what's possible. But in summary, the outsourced PEO is a great space, and it's a growing space. We feel that the Philippines can be a major player in that space. Resiliency in, you know, whether it's a typhoon or a pandemic, we have shown the capability to be there, and the Philippine government has absolutely provided a strong support for this industry. And of course, it all rests on the capable Filipino workforce that can deliver, does deliver, and it's really up for all of us, whether you're a buyer or you're a provider, to raise the bar of the capability that what work can be done in the Philippines and how we can project our value to the global market. So with that, I hand it back. Consul Armin, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, James, for sharing developments and experiences of ADEC on the growing professional employer organization services. James mentioned that PEO services increase profitability, and he also mentioned that the Philippines is a world-class destination for PEO services because of crisis-resilient environment, highly capable people, and the support that the government and its institutions are giving to the business. We will hear more from James during the Q&A session. Let's go to the next speaker. Our next speaker is Ms. Bernice Parsons, President and co-founder of Vertaccount. Bernice has over 17 years of experience managing startup and offshore business processes operations. As president and co-founder of Vertaccount, Bernice brings a unique set of expertise to Vertaccount's clients through the reliable delivery of global accounting services. Bernice has overseen extensive outsourcing engagements of various complexities and size. Her knowledge of the intricacies of offshore operations has resulted in a successful record of bridging the back-office accounting needs of local businesses with the capabilities of a global accounting team. Ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome Ms. Bernice Parsons.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to DTI and PTIC for organizing this great webinar series. And James, I couldn't have made a better case for why the Philippines is really the ideal global leader for outsourced services. So let me share my screen. Okay. All right, so today I'll be talking about accounting outsourcing, and hopefully you'll get some value out of the information that we'll be sharing today. First, just a little bit about our firm. Vertaccount was founded over 10 years ago, in November 2010, which means our 10-year anniversary is coming up. We specialize in bookkeeping and accounting services primarily. And what I'd like to emphasize is we really are a boutique outsourcing firm, which means that we're able to work with a lot of smaller business enterprises than, say, a typical, very large BPO would be able to engage with. It also means that we're able to customize and tailor our solutions to these smaller enterprises. And also that we're sort of not a commodity or commodified outsourcing services. So we don't sell our services by the seat or by the head. Mainly we work by assigning dedicated teams to our clients. So much more of a professional team, professional service, and personalized service. So the objectives for this session would be for me to share with you a little bit about the value of finance and accounting outsourcing, how it might be applicable to your business, and also how small and medium-sized businesses are using outsourcing, particularly in accounting, as a successful business strategy. So finance and accounting outsourcing, or FAO, I mean, quite simply just means contracting with an external firm or BPO firm to provide any or all of the finance and accounting functions. So typically this would include bookkeeping, accounts payable, month-end reporting, financial reports, and any kind of processes that help the managers or the business owners steer their business from a financial standpoint. So let's go a little macro, and I'm just going to tag on to what James has already done so well. The global reality is that communication, it's so easy for us to be connected these days. The cost of technology and the platforms for voice, for online, have just become so accessible to everyone. And so that means that we're more connected than ever. And as this pandemic has shown, working from home, remote teams, distributed teams, whatever you want to call it, is really the new normal. For folks like ADEC and Vertaccount, we are, seasoned at this. So we're happy to work with companies that are, learning the ropes when it comes to working remotely and how to set up successful remote teams. The other is also that intellectual capital and those skill sets are just accessible and can be delivered from anywhere. So the global reality is that, it's become a great equalizer. All of these factors have made working with an offshore team, particularly in the Philippines, a great equalizer, and same or possibly better than working with, whatever available talent there might be next door down the street. The economic equation, rather, for outsourcing is quite simple. It's more for less. So lower wages, strong work ethic, same or higher level of skills and education. It's a large talent pool to select from and to hire from. And also just the scalability and the flexibility that outsourcing engagements enable that wouldn't be available for, a more rigid in-house team. So why do smaller mid-sized businesses outsource their accounting in particular? The number one reason is permanent. Number one, but not the only. Let me clarify that. The number one reason is really for permanent overhead savings. And by overhead, it's really not just the payroll, the payroll taxes, insurance premiums, or benefits that are directly associated with an employee, but other overhead that might not be as quickly considered, such as office equipment and hardware and parking, supplies. So there's all these other costs that are around having staff in the back office that, when some of these processes are actually outsourced, the savings can be quite dramatic and as mentioned, permanent. There's also, just by its nature, an increase in productivity and efficiency that's introduced to the organizations, because every process, every finance and accounting process that is considered for outsourcing, is kind of broken down step by step and sort of re-engineered to its most efficient way and method. And so the company, the client, will then benefit from that as well. It's also very focused because the scope of work is very defined. So the accounting team is really just, or the outsourcing team is really just focused on that particular scope of work and nothing else. There's also reduced personnel risk. So I like to call this the no drama point. So if any of you work in HR, you know what that's like. So no drama, basically reduced HR related risks. There's no concerns of, are people getting along, or is anyone having a bad day? So I think that's also one of the other sort of unsung benefits to outsourcing. kind of touched on this earlier, just the introduction of best practices and procedures. Most companies might not have the time. They've been too busy growing and operating that they haven't had the time to really consider every best practice for accounting. In fact, I can tell you most don't. So outsourcing it to a specialty provider in accounting or in HR and PEO helps the company benefit from those best practices and procedures. And finally, it's also continuity and scalability. So what do I mean by continuity? Continuity, for example, in the case of Vertaccount and many other BPOs, when we work with a client, we assign a team to them, and they're working with the same team, hopefully for the duration of that relationship. And within that team, we're constantly cross-training. We are documenting procedures, we're maintaining those procedures. So there is no single point of failure within the team. And so what happens is, even as our staff move on, hopefully get promoted, move to another team, that knowledge about the client's account stays within the team and can always can be tapped. A note on scalability when it comes to outsourced engagements is really that you can right size what you need as your business grows. And again, quick note about current conditions is, we've always said, oh, we're here to scale with you as you grow, and that's largely been the case for the last 10 years. However, obviously with the pandemic, we've also been tested in terms of how do we adapt and contract as some of these businesses go through their tough times. And so we've been able to do it both ways. And I think that's why why we have these sort of long-standing relationships with our clients. So if you're here and if you're considering whether outsourcing is right for you, I would ask these questions. One is, what's your why? What is the value you're looking for? Is it just the savings? And as I've said, there's many other benefits to outsourcing than just savings. I think that's more of like the intro benefit. But determine your why on why you're doing the outsourcing. And ask if it's a long-term solution that you're looking for, because by no means is outsourcing a temporary or stopgap solution. If you're going to commit to an outsourcing solution for your business, whatever the business process may be, it is not temporary. So if you need temporary, hire a temp. Next is, have you considered what are the risks? What areas might be disrupted? Who would be directly impacted by making the transition to outsourcing? I think it will inform, for example, how you would transition to a provider. Would you do it in a phased approach? Would you do a parallel run? Would you just go dark and then go all in and start with a new team? So there's different approaches, and a lot of that is based on understanding what the risks are, and then mitigating those risks with your outsourcing provider. Number 4 would be, who are your stakeholders? So who support and buy-in do you need to make the outsourced engagement a success? And this is everybody from either not just the business owner, but the office manager, the staff that have to interact with the accounting team, the board of directors. It could be investors. So understanding who those stakeholders are is important. But I'd say that the final and most important point is, do you have the right strategic partner? And that is critical, because it's not just about who can offer the most solutions or who has the biggest team necessarily. It's also who you can really work with through challenges also, because outsourcing, particularly in the accounting space, is very collaborative. So it is a relationship and a give and take, and sometimes you're going to cross bridges that really require working together. So you want to make sure that you're working with a team that you're comfortable with, not just when things are good, but if you need to troubleshoot something. So that is that point. Let me go back to Vertaccount a bit. These are the type of services that we provide. So as mentioned earlier, a lot of the day-to-day financial operations of a business. Again, bookkeeping is the core. I'd say numbers 1 to 6. So bookkeeping through CFO support would form the bulk of the services that we provide. And we typically work with business owners directly, We report to CFOs, controllers, and sometimes we're just there in the back end working with the assigned accounting teams of the client, just as to augment their team. These are the top industries we serve. By no means exhaustive, but this kind of gives you a good snapshot of the type of companies we work with. It's rather broad, and if you're not on this list, don't worry, we can still have a conversation, but I think this is a pretty broad list. I also mentioned earlier that that scalability and right sizing. So I think this slide illustrates that. These are the different sort of client profiles that we have and the buckets that they would fall into. So we work with them in different ways sometimes. So we work with startups, entrepreneurs, mom and pop businesses. They might be doing under $1 million a year. Then we also work with growing businesses. This is a bit of a sweet spot for us because these are the companies that are outgrowing whatever their current accounting setup is and really needing more professional, reliable support. So they're usually, $1 million and up. And then we have enterprise clients, which are larger, and then some corporate clients as well. I do notice that for not in all cases, but usually the larger the company, we're usually working in a bit more of a silo. Like we're usually not the entire accounting team for a enterprise or for a corporate. We're usually working with some existing staff and executives. So we are also software agnostic. So we work with all kinds of systems and platforms, not just accounting standards like QuickBooks and Intact or Xero, but industry specific ones depending on who we're working with. So for property management and real estate, if you're in that industry, these will be familiar to you, Appfolio and Yardi. And then our clients will often come to us and they're already on a payroll service. So that's something like JustWorks or Gusto. The typical arrangements that we have are, I'd say 95% of our engagements are fixed monthly contracts. And I'll tell you a little bit more later, why that's relevant and beneficial. We also have some hourly contracts in cases where we're brought in and we just cannot contain or clearly define the scope of work. And it is a process of discovery. So those would usually be hourly contracts. And then we also have special projects or ad hoc work, things like, annual things like budgeting, but typically a lot of cleanup and catch up. So these are, books that, or parts of the books that need to be caught up for one reason or another. Okay, I won't spend too much time on this slide other than to tell you that there is a method to how we onboard clients and how we work with them. The most important step here is really the scoping step where we do a client assessment survey and we gather data from the client. It's part actual, partly data gathering, but also interviews with the client. And this is critical because we define the scope of work here. And as I mentioned, most of our clients are fixed fee. So we have to get this right because when we engage with the client, we have to be very sure that we can work within the fixed monthly fee that we set, which is essentially a budget for us. So that's why it's critical. The rest of the steps are just to show you that there is a phased approach to taking a client from, meeting a client for the first time to actually maintaining the client. And, it's all very intentional and thought through. This might be a bit oversimplified, but just to give you an idea of a typical workflow when it comes to accounting is, our clients will send us basically send us source documents to process for accounting. So what's a source document? Bills, statements, invoices, timesheets, contracts, anything with a dollar sign generally. So they will provide this to us or transmit this to us in a number of ways. They might be scanning it to us. They might be uploading it. We might be retrieving it from a system. We then process these transactions, review them, and then post them to whatever system they need to be. And that is the cycle. So right now I'm going to share with you just the next few slides, some case studies. So real world application of accounting outsourcing strategies. This client, they run a home security business. So kind of think ADT. And their main challenge was that they had a relatively high number of vendor bills to process every month. And they were missing out on the 2% vendor discount because they didn't have full control of their accounting process. It wasn't well supported, their accounts payable process, excuse me. So the solution we implemented was to actually train on their system. They were not on a standard accounting platform. They were in a industry specific ERP. So we trained on that. We studied it, I think, more in depth than their existing team because we had the bandwidth and the depth to be able to do that. And then we implemented a tracking and supporting for all of the accounts payable and process all of accounts payable. And the end result was that after about, I want to say it was about 4, maybe 6 accounting cycles. This one was a little bit complicated as we had to define all of the different approval processes and departments. But really the end result was they were able to maximize those cost savings by being able to track in much better time and take advantage of those net 2% discounts. So another case study to share with you is nonprofits. My heart goes out to nonprofits for this reason. Nonprofits are always either short-staffed, undermanned, underpowered, under-budgeted, and yet they have the most complex compliance requirements, much more than a small or mid-sized business. So they don't have, the deck is not stacked in their favor. So we work with a lot of nonprofits, and in this case, it was the challenges were all of the above that I named, and especially having to monitor their grants because that's basically how they get a lot of their funding. So we put in place a full outsourced accounting team, everything from processing their bills, closing their books every month, but also tracking their grants and reporting on their grants so that they were never in danger moving forward of losing that funding. And we also set up a financial calendar for them and monitor that so that they don't miss any of these compliance deadlines. And the result was that, in this case, they were able to free up their project coordinator and the ED, the executive director, to actually focus on their mission and other higher level, higher value tasks and use of their time. And there's better internal control for them. The auditors were happier, and as was the board. Next case study is a CPA firm and outsourced CFO firms. Some of you might be surprised that we actually work with CPA firms. We do. They're essentially like wholesale partners to us, and we are either white label or just like OEM, to use a manufacturing term. In this case, we don't have direct relationships with their clients. Our client is the CPA or the CFO firm. Their challenges, and again, reflective of the public accounting industry, is just the difficulty and cost of recruiting accounting staff and personnel. It's very costly, very competitive, harder and harder to find staff. So there was also turnover, and they didn't have any margins on some of the bookkeeping or the recurring monthly work that they committed to their clients. They had no bandwidth. They couldn't accept new engagements for accounting support because they didn't have the staff, and they couldn't charge enough for it. So the solution we provided was we sat with them and actually advised them on how to break out the different client scope of works. And for each of those, we defined a fixed fee engagement. So it became very predictable for them. And we dedicated a team to them to do perform this work on a monthly basis. So the net result was just that reliability in the accounting staff that they were looking for. They were also able to free up their higher costing staff to be billed at better margins. And they were also able to take on new clients because now they have more bandwidth by using our services. Lastly is an example here of a small business. This is, as I mentioned earlier, sort of a sweet spot for us. This small business is an ad agency in New York. And they've been in business for a few years, and they outgrew their office manager. Love her dearly. She still works with them, but she was not, as the business grew, she was not able to keep up with the the higher level financial skills that were needed and accounting skills that were needed to help the business owners run the business and make good decisions. They were also looking for, essentially leveling up their accounting and you needed order, process, procedures. So this is where we came in and we were hired. So we put those in place. We identified their roles, our responsibilities, vice versa. In this case, we are also doing most of their accounting except their AR. I think they continue to do that in-house. And the result is that, their accounting is now very boring. As I like to say, it's sort of a humming in the background as it should be, and just, like clockwork, they get the reports when they need to, bills get paid, and it just helps them run a much more, in a much more stable way. And now they have a professional accounting team that can scale with them as they grow. So in all of those 4 case studies that I just shared with you, the common success factors are, there's discipline on both sides, not just Vertaccount's, but the client side, because when you are ready to outsource your accounting, you do need to have that discipline. We set cutoff schedules. We'll say, okay, we need these documents by Monday, 6 p.m. Pacific. So there's that shift, of putting in that order. There is a lot of collaboration. As I referred to earlier, accounting is not just a vendor relationship, nor do you want it to be or treat it as that, because it really requires partnership. And if you want to get the most out of your accounting and get accurate accounting, timely accounting reports, you need to work well with you need to collaborate and invest time to work with your outsourced accounting team. The other thing is that, for these successful engagements, the clients viewed it as a catalyst for change within their operations, use it as a way to become more efficient, more productive. I think this is sort of the pivot that James was referring to earlier, where companies, kind of can take stock, especially now in this particular moment, on how are we running our business? Is there a different way we can run our business? Is our business really accounting, bookkeeping, payroll? I mean, if it's not that, then maybe we should be considering outsourcing some of these back office services. And actually, as in both cases, we are actually the back end for some of these other PEOs, HR, payroll, and accounting companies as well. And finally, there's that mutual accountability on both sides and an understanding of that. So that is where I will leave it. Thank you very much for your time and attention. And I look forward to your questions in the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bernice, for that very informative and comprehensive discussion. I'd like to jump straight into the Q&A because we have several questions from our audience. And let me start with a question that is for both of our speakers. What key ingredients make your businesses succeed and thrive in the Philippines? I think this question will be very useful for those who are members of our audience who are thinking of investing in the Philippines, whether in a similar line of business or in another form of making an investment in the country.
If I could just use two words,
Yes.
Trust and capability. The client, you need to be able to trust that you will be able to communicate the real deal, good, bad, and different. And there are challenges in outsourcing, and that they need to understand that you as a vendor, you as a partner will absolutely tell them the way things really are, and that trust is super important. The other one is capability. At the end of the day, we have a lot of capability in the Philippines. We need to be able to put it in a framework that it's internationally understood and that it can meet or exceed our clients' capability. With those two things, that's what we found as the secret sauce. And frankly, it's not a secret, but it needs to be put out to the forefront.
Thank you, James. Bernice, would you like to answer the question?
Is this Michelle Tan's question?
No, it's Nick Bautista's question. What are the key ingredients for the success of your business in the Philippines?
I think it's just the quality of the workforce. I think the Philippine labor force has, it's something in our culture, which is really very service oriented, family oriented. I've been looking for the English translation of malasakit, which means you kind of sacrifice to do the right thing. And I think that is very unique in global services. And I think that is one of the reasons the Philippines really stands out. I feel like we're able to really forge these, as James referenced, very trusting and loyal relationships with our clients.
Thank you, Bernice. There's another question for you, coming from SDR Nick Bautista, and the question is, you mentioned that one of the key considerations for outsourcing is the long-term nature of the arrangement. Does this imply that you do not entertain project-based outsourcing contracts?
It depends, because if it is of enough scale and size, we would definitely consider it. The main thing is that because our infrastructure is really set up for recurring services, for us to jump into a project sort of just a one-time means that we would be potentially disrupting some of our other teams and taking personnel from there to jump onto the project. So it would just have to be, worthwhile or make sense, essentially.
Thank you. A question for James. The COVID situation exposes the many fractures in society, governments, and businesses. How can the back office solutions in the Philippines service this changing landscape in terms of providing higher level environmental, social, and governance back office support? Are the skill set available?
Wow. Actually, that's a great question, and it's far-reaching from the standpoint of actually, Bernice has a piece of this and would appreciate it. The world is actually undergoing an accounting for things that were not accounted for, and I speak of carbon, greenhouse gases, clean water, waste, all sorts of attributes that, while we've done a great job as a society of accounting for everything financial, the non-financial attributes of society that are actually bearing down on us have not been properly accounted for. And we are under the process of the world's biggest accounting exercise of integrating non-financial data into how people, governments, coalitions, private sector start to look and manage their business. The Philippines we have qualified engineers, environmental engineers, we have qualified accountants, we have this capability, we have the technology to actually do and have a bigger punch in causing a positive impact. Now I'm speaking because this is our business, but we absolutely believe in this. We're true believers that we can have a more positive impact for society, helping them make better decisions, but also create value for the Philippines as a service provider, and value for the clients who are adapting different ways of doing business. So in short, the answer is the resources are in the Philippines, and there is a brand new space when you think of accounting for all these capabilities, all these non-financial data points of the world. It's bigger than anyone could imagine. It's bigger than the current world accounting for financial attributes, which is really only just a single way to look at an entire enterprise. Without the environment, we have no business. Let's put it that way.
Thank you, James. I think we have time for one more question for both of the panelists. Because of the economic damage brought about by COVID, the US government is pushing to reshore more of its products and services by relying less on foreign suppliers. Do you think that outsourcing services, such as what your companies provide, will eventually get affected, and how can we help anticipate this and adjust to this if it happens?
Bernice, would you like to take the lead on that first, and I'll do a follow-up?
Sure. I think that as I mentioned in my presentation, once a company considers outsourcing and has made that shift, it's often very difficult. They don't want to bring it back. Let's put it that way. Once you kind of see and experience what that engagement can be like and how you can run, a certain business process that way, there's usually no turning back. But in terms of, say, a policy or governmental policy to actually reshore as opposed to offshore, I think that the market for offshore accounting or offshore outsourcing services will continue to grow. I mean, we've actually seen it even in this crisis. There is demand there will continue to be demand for those higher skill sets and for that economic equation that I shared earlier, and also those global realities that it's just too compelling, I suppose, a business proposition, an environmental proposition to actually do that. It is back office. So these are not the mission critical aspects of the business. This is not outsourcing building the houses or other aspects that are very high touch in terms of the businesses, right? This is really about the back office, which I think will continue to grow. That's my opinion on that.
Thank you, Bernice. I would like to add to that. We come at it from a perspective of we have onshore. We actually have engagements where we're on the client sites in the client's facilities. We also have our own onshore. We have nearshore and offshore solutions. So we have engagements with customers or with governments where they absolutely have to be done onshore. And then we have engagements where clients will have a percentage that some has to be done 50% onshore, 50% offshore. We find that the flexibility of being able to deliver to the client's needs and some of these political short-term realities are needed, but in the end, the work goes to the best price and the best quality. And that tends to be that journey, that path that eventually leads to the Philippines. But anything that can remove clients' pain points and along that journey, as a business, we've installed. So that gives us some advantage in sometimes. But at the end of the day, we believe that the business, we agree with Bernice, the business is going to continue to grow in the Philippines.
Thank you, James. Thank you, Bernice. I was informed that we have time for one or two more questions. So let me quickly ask you these questions. For both of you, again, in terms of outsourcing, what safety measures do you put in place to protect the data of clients? Also, will you sign non-disclosure, non-circumvention agreements for your clients?
Bernice, would you like to lead off?
Yeah, go ahead, James. I'll
okay. Sure. So the things that we put in, so we operate in some of the most stringent data security. Europe right now has some of the strongest country and as a EU data privacy requirements. So every region, every country, and then every company has their own aspects of data security, and you need to meet and exceed that. And the reality is that's the minimum level that it takes to be in the business. And yes, as far as not dealing with or signing clients agreements, yes, those are a minimum expectation that you're required to be in the game.
Yes, and just adding to what James has explained, there is some for us to be operating as BPOs and outsourced providers, this is our business. We have to sort of live and die by how we handle our clients' data and privacy. We would not be around, I think, if we were careless with that. So we definitely will at least have that standard of whatever the agencies like the IRS or EU would require. But I think furthermore, it's all data encryption. So when we work with sensitive data, such as bank statements, credit cards, we do try to use as much as possible best-in-class third-party systems that do a better job of that than we ever could. We're an accounting outsource provider. We're not a fintech company. We're not a data company, right? So we will employ those. We'll use those tools to help us manage our clients' data. So we use things like encrypted email, secure FTP transfers. We use a system called LastPass so that our entire team doesn't know what the certain logins are. It's all sort of in this vault, and only very limited personnel have access to it. And I think it also comes, I think more importantly, this question on handling privacy data is about also the culture that you build within your company on how you view that, which ADEC does magnificently, and as we try to do as well, is you just have to create that sensitivity to, this is data, this is precious, how do you handle that? And it's also it's in our employment contracts, it's in our client contracts, how we handle data. And yes, we do a lot of NDAs as well.
If I could just add to what Bernice was saying, another aspect is, to be very frank, the clients often have worse data security than we ever would. But we're required, because we're the offshore partner, to show such a high level of capability, and also the insurance policies we carry often exceed the insurance policies our clients carry. So that's just the nature of the game.
Thank you. I just want to ask this last question. If your client is located in the US, is pricing competitive because you can have work done in lower cost locals like in the Philippines? James, would you like to?
It is price and value, obviously are the first attention getters, but that doesn't keep a client. Quality does. Building a relationship, the culture of the people they work with, the turnaround time, the fact that the work can be done overnight while, work gets done overnight and it's on the client's desk in the morning. These are attributes that keep the client. Price absolutely sort of gets the discussion going because it moves the needle. But once that bar is changed, that's just a given. That is now the new price. The real value we compete on is everything else besides price at that point.
Yep. Right. All the pain points that go away, basically.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much, James and Bernice, and the members of our audience for the lively discussion. We apologize for not being able to raise all the questions in the chat box due to time constraints, but we will flash on the screen the contact details of ADEC and Vertaccount. You can note down these contact details so that you can get in touch directly with James and Bernice. We thank you again for joining us today. If you missed any of the presentations during our 8-part webinar series, you can go to YouTube page of Philippines IT BPM. If you want to learn more about outsourcing, we invite you to also attend the Outsourcing Summit 2020 on October 8th, organized by Outsource Accelerator. The details are on your screen. Maraming salamat, and we look forward to helping you start your outsourcing journey. See you in the Philippines. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Consul.
Thank you, James. Thank you, Bernice.
Thank you, Bernice.
Thank you, James. We'll be in touch.
May we request James and Bernice, I think, to stay for a minute or two?
Will do.
Oh, hi, Andrea. Now I see you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you, James.
Thank you, guys.
And this,
Great work.
Thank you, Andrea.
yes, and since this is our last of the last of our 8-part webinar, again, this would not have been possible without Andrea. Andrea, I would send you flowers if I could. Thank you very much.
Congratulations, Andrea.
Yeah, she worked so hard for this, and we were so glad and happy to support you on this initiative.
Great job.
Thank you.
Andrea.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Celine. Thank you so much, Eric, Esther, also Arlene, everyone, our speakers, James, Bernice, our different consuls, and salamat. And we have to continue enjoying this and promoting the industry as a whole. And we hope that the webinar series will generate more interest among businesses here in the United States and the outsourcing. Again, maraming salamat po.